So what we're going to do today is simply share what we're doing. And really a goal of this is to figure out where additional collaboration may be possible. But, you know, I see, I hear the very brief reports from some folks who say come from 350.org. Hi, Jody. And it's good to, but just better understand what are the top priorities of each organization. The challenges, not just all the wonderful things that have happened, but the challenges that are faced, what people are struggling with, you know, what the opportunities are, and then again, how can collaboration take place. So with that, and this could be a short meeting, and short is okay. So let's, unless anybody else wants to speak, I have one last thing, which is my opening statement is about Marin Conservation League. I will say that our mission is to preserve, protect, and enhance the natural assets of Marin in a changing environment. And if you're not already a member, please look at marinconservationleague.org and you can join. So Ride and Drive Clean is going to be joining us at around 9:30. Lori Mott and Annika. And so maybe what we could do is start with you, Bill, Sustainable San Rafael. And you're on mute.
Okay. Also still gathering my notes here, but expecting to be inspired by the two people in front of me. Wasn't there someone else in front of me? Oh, Ride Clean and yeah, David.
I could go, Bill, if you needed a couple more minutes.
That would be very inspiring, David, if you could do that.
All right.
Okay, well, I'd be happy to do that. So I'm going to talk about two groups here. The Electric Vehicle Squad, we go by EV Squad, and the Building Electrification Squad, we go by BE Squad. And Bob asked that I provide a little bit of background, what the connection is with the Climate Reality Project. So I'm going to start with that, and then I'll get into the work of the two squads. So Climate Reality Project is a group started by Al Gore. It's a national organization, and it focuses primarily on training local people to become climate leaders and to reach out to their communities as climate advocates for climate policy action, primarily policy action. And there have been, I don't even know, but tens of thousands of people trained around the world, not just in the US. Well, in the US, then there are local chapters, Climate Reality Project chapters, and there's a Bay Area chapter. Actually, there's two chapters in the Bay Area. There's a South Bay and a Bay Area. And in the Bay Area chapter, there's a section of that, a focus section called the Policy Action Team. And so that's a group that focuses specifically on policy action as opposed to like legislation or social equity issues and stuff like that. So in this Policy Action Team, there's three subject focuses. The first one was clean generation, then building electrification, then electric vehicles, the transition to electric vehicles. And what folks that were interested in working on policy actions decided to do is focus on those three subject areas and to form sort of county level squads. So this would be members of Climate Reality Project, but open to anybody that would form at sort of a county level organization and focus on those three subject areas. So in Marin County, there ultimately were two of these county level squads formed. The first one formed was the electric vehicle squad, and that was formed just about 3 years ago to focus specifically on accelerating the transition to EVs, but from a policy perspective, like what could we do in the policy arena to accelerate that transition? And then about 2 years ago, we formed the building electrification squad to focus specifically on accelerating the transition to building electrification. Each one of these squads has about 50 members, and there's some overlap between the two. I would say, at least a third of the members are common to both. Each of the squads has I would say about 20 very active members, people that, regularly attend the meetings and do stuff. And I would say about half of the members are climate reality project train leaders. So quite a few other people that are not, but that's great. And what we've been able to do is kind of attract people to those two squads because we have pretty narrow focus. I think that's what people like, is that it's around one of those two issues, building electrification or the accelerating the transition to EVs, and that we're only really looking at policy related stuff. Now we have expanded out a little bit on that, and I'll talk about that in a minute. The one other thing, we actually had some folks in Sonoma County that were very interested in becoming part. So we call ourselves the Marin Sonoma Building Electrification Squad and the Marin Sonoma EV Squad. And we do have a few Sonoma County members active. So I'm going to talk first then about the electric vehicle squad, the first one that was formed. And I'll be pretty brief about this, but there is one subject area there that we could use some help. So the first thing we focused on was compliance with a state law called AB 1236, which had required all 540 jurisdictions in California, that's counties and cities, to adopt streamlined permitting processes for electric vehicle charging. And at the time that we formed, only 2 of Marin's 12 jurisdictions had adopted that. And I don't remember the number in Sonoma County, but it was similar. And so we really pressed all the jurisdictions on that. And ultimately, we got all 12 Marin jurisdictions and all the Sonoma jurisdictions in compliance with that. So that was a big success. Then we started focusing on expanding the charging network, public charging. We identified sites throughout both counties that we thought were really good sites. We especially focused on areas that had a lot of multi-unit dwellings because folks who live in multi-unit dwellings often don't have charging capability that single-family resident owners have. We identified 3 sites. We reached out to some, actually there are 4 sites. We reached out to Electrify America, which has several charging stations in Marin already. They were interested, and we've been working with them for a few years now. 2 of those 4 sites are actively moving ahead. One of them was the Gateway Oaks Shopping Center up in Novato, and it's tied up on another problem right now. But so we actually had 3 of those moving ahead. 2 are active right now. The next thing we took on was improved charging reliability. And this is because anyone on the call here who drives an EV and has tried to use publicly accessible charging stations has probably found they're not very reliable. About 25% at any given time are not operative. And so we started rattling the cage around that a little bit at the California Energy Commission and the California Air Resources Board, who have jurisdiction on those matters. And they all said, oh, no, everything's fine. So we joined up with Ride and Drive Clean and a professor emeritus at UC Berkeley, and actually conducted our own reliability study using proper study technologies on that, and found that about 25% are not operative at any given time. I forget the number of charging stations that got surveyed, but every public charging station, the high-speed charging stations in the Bay Area was checked. 600 and some odd charging stations. And so that study now is has gone to both CEC and the CARB, and recently there's even been publicity about it. It was on the front page of the Chronicle about 2 weeks ago. And so we're really getting some traction. I have to really give credit mostly to Ride and Drive Clean, but also a West Marin climate activist group that joined up with the EV squad on that. So that's really a big deal. And it's also getting traction at the Department of Transportation in DC and the governor's office. So it's really quite a big deal. And we're really glad to be moving that ahead. That's the one on the EV squad that maybe could use some help. We want to make sure that it doesn't go down the path of EV charging is not viable. We want to make sure it goes down the path of EV charging needs to get more viable, because the number of EVs and the need for a reliable charging network is going to become greater and greater. So the main thing around that is to keep the positive dialogue, to keep letters to the editors going and so on about, but with that positive spin, not the negative spin on that. The other things that the EV squad's involved in, of course, we're watching political and legislative matters, and especially the climate action plans, as each one of the Marin and Sonoma jurisdictions updates their caps to make sure they have appropriate features in there. We've long time been kind of monitoring and kind of a thorn in the side of TAM, Transportation Authority of Marin. They have a clean fuel program. It's one of their smallest programs, but we're always there talking about how to spend that money and asking them to increase that program. The two other areas we're working on, one is technology. There's a product that we identified called Orange Outlet, and it allows, you plug it into a regular receptacle. It can be a 110 or a 220 receptacle. It works for either one. And then you use the charging cord that comes with your car, with your EV when you buy it, to plug into that. But part of the technology, it allows a third party then to track all the amount of electricity and to bill for that. And so the idea is, especially people who live in apartments or condos or multi-unit dwellings that want to have home charging, but can't do it because there's not the same direct linkage that you have at a single family residence. I mean, it's your meter. So when you plug in at your single family residence, you're charging for it. It's not always that way in condos. And this is to get to enable folks who live in those other settings to charge their electric vehicles, but then have the charging handled, the billing handled by a third party. So we've been very active in helping roll that out and to publicize that.
David, sorry to interrupt. This is a very cogent presentation.
Too much?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
I got to put on my timekeeper hat on. So if you could make it the building electrification piece a little shorter, that would be great.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so the final piece on the EV squad is we're monitoring a number of new developments here in Marin to make sure they have appropriate charging infrastructure. On the building electrification squad, our main focus has been on getting all electric ordinances passed, especially for new construction in Marin and Sonoma County. We've one jurisdiction with us of adopting an all-electric ordinance for new buildings and major remodels is we're working with Marin County that's leading an effort to bring all
David, you're freezing up, David, and I can't hear you.
Is this any better?
It's coming and going. In the last minute or so, you've been, your speech has been very slow, and periodically you've been freezing up.
I don't know that there's anything I can do about it.
You can take your video off.
Okay, yeah, good idea. Perfect. Is that any better now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go with that then. So I just on the building electrification squad, our big push has been to get as many jurisdictions as possible to adopt all electric ordinances, to have new construction be all electric, and any major remodels as well. We were successful in that in Fairfax, adopted that ordinance. San Anselmo is right on the cusp of adopting an all electric ordinance. And we're working with Marin County, that's working with all 12 Marin jurisdictions for a model ordinance with the idea of having all 12 ordinances adopt this, all 12 jurisdictions adopt the same ordinance at the same time, effective January 1st, 23. And so we've got a number of other things going on, but I'm going to focus in primarily on that because that's where we could use some help. The status of that is there's going to be a public workshop hosted by the county, June 22nd at 6 p.m. Participation in that would be helpful. All the jurisdictions now, we formed green teams for each jurisdiction. Most jurisdictions that have had members of the public speak during the public comment period to make sure all electeds are aware of this. All the jurisdictions have participating staff in this countywide effort. So it's a happening deal. We've got a Marin Voice article in that ought to be published in the next week or two in the IJ. And the main thing we have to concern ourselves with here is not to elicit a bunch of pushback. And the pushback would be from people that think we're talking about existing homes and they don't want it to affect their gas ranges. So where we're going to need help going forward is for organizations, and I'll be reaching out to organizations on this, to write letters to their elected officials in support of this countywide ordinance. I say countywide, but it would take each jurisdiction to adopt individually. Focus is on new construction. And just to give you a sense, I think most of you know.
David, maybe what we should do is wrap this up. It's a great presentation. Right. We got to move on to some other folks. But if you want to say the last couple of words, go ahead.
Yeah. Yep. I'll say just two things. The regional housing needs allocation is for 14,000 new residences in Marin County by 2030. We want to make sure those are all electric. Right now, there's about applications for about 2,500 residents pending in Marin County. We're reaching out and working with the developers of all those to try and get them to be all electric. And so far, we're batting 1,000% on that. So
great. Okay, thank you, David.
Yep.
I think it's an appropriate time to bring something up with David.
Sure, go ahead.
David, what the things that you and your groups are doing are just outstanding and exceptionally important. I have a request.
Okay.
Given that I'm very active in San Rafael and with city council members and staff, we're not working together, you and those of us that are working directly with San Rafael. And if there's some way of you looping us in, that'd be people like me and Kate Powers and others, maybe Bill Carney. It'd be very helpful so we're not going at odds with each other because we're supporting the same thing. So just ask you to keep that in mind.
All right, perfect. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so Phil, hopefully you're inspired at this point, and why don't you talk about sustainable San Rafael?
Okay, and what is the time frame that you're hoping for?
I was thinking about 5 to 7 minutes.
Okay.
per speaker.
Okay, good. So thanks for lining up the topics. It's really useful to, reflect on what we're doing, what our organizations are doing, and also the challenges that we're facing, et cetera. So Sustainable San Rafael is one chapter of Sustainable Marin. And there are also chapters in Novato and Mill Valley, and Fairfax also has a sustainable chapter. So our premise, Sustainable San Rafael's premise, is that we need to solve something of the magnitude of climate change. We really need to focus on systemic solutions, i.e. what we can do together as a community. And that translates into what we can do through our governments on all levels. But our mantra is to start with the democracy that's closest to you, which is down at City Hall or at the Civic Center. These are readily accessible microphones in which to keep building the conversation around climate, but more specifically to tie that conversation to particular actions. So our sort of narrowing focus is a geographic focus on the town that you live in, or the county. So in terms of current activity, our current frame is to implement the 2-year priorities that the City Council in San Rafael has set for its Climate Change Action Plan, or CCAP. And those are parallel to a lot of what David's been talking about. And the electrical ordinance. So we get as close to all electric buildings as we can, and embed that in local law, and also an EV plan, which is called for in our CCAP. And then thirdly, on a ordinance level, is one that actually has been adopted now, with largely because of pushing from the state, which is for organic recycling of organic materials. And that is now an ordinance in most jurisdictions. Ours was adopted in January, but its enforcement is something that's going to be, rolled out over several years. So that's an ongoing effort as well. We also have recently adopted a general plan and a downtown plan. And so following on the implementation of those, a good current example being Northgate Center, which has a lot of folks involved in having input on, and we're one of the voices in that effort to try to get as much affordable housing, but in the right places at the right scale, et cetera. And that's one of our overriding efforts as well, not just in Northgate, but citywide, along with the downtown plan and the general plan. And I'll mention some others as I go along here. But jumping down to challenges, I think the main challenge for us standing in front of those microphones is business as usual is the default position of most government bodies. And that's true locally and on up the food chain. The easy thing to do is to deal with problems in the way you've always dealt with them and think about them in the way you've always dealt with them. So getting that message of thinking about everything in the context of climate change is really, really an important thing. So I think that's the single sort of biggest challenge. And of course, the way of doing that is to get people out talking. I mean, councils listen to people, listen to individuals and to organizations. So come on down and join up is our standing invitation, so that we can speak as a single voice, or even not as a single voice, but a lot of voices. In terms of opportunities, we have been thinking quite a bit lately about the dominance of climate adaptation in the climate conversation. We have examples of all sorts of bills and actions that are called climate bills, and they're really climate adaptation bills. And I'm thinking of and huge amounts of money attached to them. I'm thinking of wildfire in particular, both locally and statewide, but there are a lot of others. So we've been thinking about, well, okay, how do we, make that into an asset by tying climate adaptation actions to to climate mitigation actions. So for instance, if people are thinking a lot about heat and smoke events because they experience those, well, that's an opportunity to get people thinking about getting a heat pump HVAC system, which includes air conditioning to cool things down, includes good filtration to filter out the smoke. So, and obviously does great things for reducing greenhouse gases. Or power outages, get people thinking about rooftop solar tied to battery backup, and particularly battery backup through EVs as that technology rolls out. Wildfire reduction, I've mentioned, and we're going to hear in a minute from Bell about ecologically sound practices and biomass management as ways of addressing greenhouse gases within that context of wildfire reduction, which has certainly the focus of this county and a lot of money behind it. And then finally, sea level rise, and it's back to San Rafael, big effort about to take place when the funding gets finalized of sea level rise planning in the canal. And we will certainly be a part of that, particularly supporting natural solutions, horizontal levees, wetlands restoration, and that sort of thing, as tying that adaptation challenge to a sequestration opportunity. So I think those are some of the highlights. On the sequestration front, I just want to mention that we've been looking more and more at trees and urban forestry, and we're working with a group on an urban forestry ordinance here. And that's something that all jurisdictions could play their part in really keeping the sequestration capacity that we have right now and expanding that in the form of trees and open space and street trees and all of that. So those are opportunities. And then finally, help wanted. Yeah, we could use more board members. So anyone who lives in San Rafael or works in San Rafael and would be interested in, teaming up with Sustainable San Rafael, that would be great. I think the collaboration that Bob mentioned at the beginning and that David has really, exemplified of working among ourselves as various groups. I mean, we work a lot with you and other organizations, represented here and elsewhere and beyond. We work a lot in calling upon you as allies to help out when there are particular issues in San Rafael or particular opportunities. And the other example, so COG's a great example of that. The squads are a great example of that. Time to Lead on Climate that Bell and I have been involved in is a good example of that. There were a dozen organizations that participate in those efforts. So that kind of help for advocacy is a big need. On a very granular level, I'll just conclude with, we would love to have somebody cheering up on our Sustainable San Rafael board, membership and advocacy. Building membership, but also getting people out around their particular issues. Big need that we have. We have a big need in social media, and somebody to help us with our newsletter would be a big help. So those are some particulars, and we're going to particular help wanted signs that we're putting out right now. So again, I think COG has a really key role in a lot of this, and I appreciate all the work that happens on this forum. Thanks. Oh, and I do, Bob, if I can, I'd like to come back at the very end. I think I'll be talking about the what you call drawdown, but is of course Marin Can, and I'd also like to insert a little bit about resilient neighborhoods at that point.
Okay. So, folks, I'm going to ask for your advice. We've just had two excellent presentations on two organizations, great work. And the question is just, do you want them this as long, or should we set a real time limit of, say, 7 minutes per organization? I'm seeing Jody nodding your head. You know, this is our meeting, meaning the meeting of the folks who are here. What would you like?
What's the choice?
Well, we could have a hard limit of, say, 7 minutes.
It's fine.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Okay. Okay. I see Danielle is nodding her head, 2 thumbs up, and Pam. Okay. So so brevity is the soul of wit. And with that, Belle, why don't you take it away?
Oh, okay. Well, let's see where to begin. I'm going to talk about 3 organizations where I have a leadership position. One of them is my original, which is Organizing for Action in Marin, OFA Marin. Another one is the Ecologically Sound Practices Partnership, and the other is the Marin Biomass Project, which is, I'm not going to say too much because it's in the really evolutionary stage, but I'll say something. And so on OFA, we are continuing with a kind of almost like a tripart goal. I mean, one is climate advocacy, but we also advocate for other progressive issues. In our climate advocacy, we work with all of you. We've been around a long time, say 2010. We've evolved from something that was more associated with a political party, but now we are not that. So we have advocacy. We also have learning and research, and we also have training. So if people need to train on advocacy, we've been doing this for a while and we can continue to do it. So, and we just had an event last night, which one of our members came up with a new plan with a map, how to deal with defensible space for wildfire prevention. And so we give him a platform and a chance to make inroads in his areas. So that's OFA. ESP, this is where we stand now, is that ESP partnership is essentially a collaborative with the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority. And we have a separate status. And our job is to see that whatever is going to be done by them in their wildfire practices is done in a way that is that were ecologically sound, not just practices, but also policies are carried out. And it was a unique institution when it was created a couple of years ago. And now we have about 100 scientists who are part of it. We have about 20 to 30 different institutions that are part of it. They don't all come to every meeting, but it's in a substantial group, and we have our own steering committee, which consists of people from the fire professional world, MWPA, and also from the environmental, from about 4 or 5 of us from the environmental group. And the last event we had was, we put on an event called Science Behind Vegetation Management. And it was very successful. And these are things that the fire officials really want to see happen. They want to bring us into the science of what they're doing, and they want to show us what they're doing. So it's a collaboration, and our job is to see that what they do is founded on good principles. Therefore, we have created what are called the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority guidelines. We've been working on this for a few years, and it is now, these guidelines are now about to be approved, we think, we hope, by the MWPA board. And so it will be established within the organization that that these principles and that these practices will be carried out. And so that is that's something that is going to take place, we think, on June 16th. Finally, we will get the approval of the NWPA for these practices, and about 20 pages worth. And anybody who's interested in them, we can provide a copy. It's not final yet, but it should be soon. So this is an experimental, but it seems to be working quite well, because we bring people in who have immediate direct expertise on subjects that are important for wildfire prevention activities, and also for getting the ecologically sound practices ideas out to the public. And then the final area that we've been working on is the Marin biomass project, which grew out of what was then Drawdown Marin Can. It was a successful project, and it is now at the stage where we've been meeting for 2 years and working on a study mainly in the utilization of biomass in Marin, but also on assessing what the biomass is, what its characterization is, and where it can go. And so we're looking at it from the point of view, this is a major study, and so it's going to be a study on facts, and it's going to be a study on collaboration, so that we can achieve policy results that will be satisfactory to all the stakeholders. And there are many stakeholders, and we have just received a grant of $500,000 from the Office of Planning and Research to carry this on, along with 4 other groups in the state. So we are thrilled at the opportunity to make this study as meaningful as possible. And we're about to hire a project manager, and we have something that is very exciting, which is that the Marin RCD has agreed to be the project, the fiscal manager of this. And so we're making our way through it. We're about to hire a project manager, and then the group will hire a consultant to do the major study. But all of you will be involved, and it's a subject that needs explanation, because not everybody knows what biomass is, and there's some people who don't understand it fully, and that's very understandable. But so in terms of these 3 things, I would say where we need maybe, I think, fuller understanding of both what ESP is and how you can get involved and know more about it. We're putting out a new website, the ESP, and we'll include you, and then we'll seek ideas. There's always the problem in a wildfire situation where people are looking at best practices to recognize the urgency of putting out fires and not thinking about the significance of the environment and of the climate considerations. And by the way, let me just mention one thing about the biomass study, is that it's the first one I've seen anywhere where one of the criteria for projects that will be acceptable, that will be a solution to the problems that we have, requires meeting standards of climate, ES standards for emissions and resiliency. So we're really thrilled about that. And so I would just say, mostly pay attention. And if you get something for us or see a website, join us. That's what I can say now. Thank you.
Thank you, Belle. And Belle, you did go for 90 minutes, but then again, you were reporting on 3 separate organizations / projects. So you get a pass on that. Thank you. So Jody, why don't you talk about 350.org and other work that you're doing?
Okay, I'm starting my timer.
By the way, I'll give folks a 2-minute warning.
That'd be good.
That'd be good. Okay.
That's good.
Okay, so let me cut this down a little bit, but just by way, of our larger organization, 350.org, a few of us are involved with Third Act, which is Bill McKibben's sort of new project for older adults. If you're interested at that national level, 350 Bay Area, of course, is 6 of the regional 350s. They have both a 501c4 that does Bay Area action. So they've been doing some endorsements, and for the first time and did an endorsement for us here in Marin. 350 Bay Area, they have an event coming up that I want to mention, the Road to Livable Climate. So it's a bike ride and walk 4 different days in different parts of the Bay Area. If you are interested in a fundraiser on that front, the Marin ride is June 4th. So you can go to 350 Bay Area and learn a little bit more about that if you'd like. Let's see. I'll focus for just a minute on 350 Marin. Much of what we've been doing this last year, but for a number of years, is our internship program. And Danielle, who's here today, is a new member on our steering committee. And she's been super helpful with the kind of coordinating our internship program. We had 3 high school students this year that she worked very closely with. And we currently right now have 2 young college students who are getting stipends. The high school students don't get paid. And these 2 college students are, the internship is called Climate Action Planning Assistants. So the 2 of them are working with myself and Kathleen Gundry, who are chairing the San Anselmo and Fairfax Climate Action Committees. These 2 students will be working with us through the summer. So by way of an ask, what I would mention is, if you are interested in donating specifically to our internship program so that we can continue to fund young climate warriors and leaders, you can go to 350.org or 350marin.org, of course, and donate, and just mention that you want it to go to the internship program. So the high school students this year focused on building electrification, and I think individually learned quite a bit about that area in general. And then, of course, Lucy and Elise, I'm sorry, Lucy and Elise, our interns for the summer, are working on the climate action plan. I'll just also mention about 350 Marin. We occasionally have had events. We're looking at possibly having some Zoom events through the summer that maybe the high school students will coordinate. But one of the things that we've done as a steering committee is continue to meet monthly, not just for our business meeting, but socially. We have a group called the Radical Activist Salon, and we meet once a month, and your assignment is to bring good news and bad news about the climate and have a balance to some degree. But we have some fascinating conversations among us. We usually are meeting at a local pub and having those conversations. So if anybody's really interested in, let me know. We haven't made it generally open, but it is meant for people who are really working on the front lines of climate action and trying to balance and work hard for the changes that we need. Yes, climate deniers, there's climate deniers, and now there's this term climate delayers, which are all of us who know what we should be doing and won't move fast enough. So that's important to continue to look at. The other thing I'll mention, I guess, is just to jump for a minute to 3 minutes, 48 seconds to Fairfax Climate Action Committee and at San Anselmo. So Kathleen and I have been going to each other's meetings. We're working really closely. As some of you may know, we pushed really hard for about 2 years to get a staff person. So we have a brand new, Sean Uri is a staff who's split half-time between the 2 cities. So we're doing a lot more coordinating on activities. One of the things, Fairfax passed the all electric for new buildings. San Anselmo is doing that next Tuesday night, or they're introducing that next week. We're also trying to push our council to adopt all electric for substantial remodels. So we're working closely. We have a landscape ordinance that's about to come up. That would be for all landscape equipment must be all electric by January 2023. We're working on fleet electrification. We did get the town to order a F-150 all electric truck and a Mach-E for the police department. So that's moving along. We also, as a climate action committee, we come up with a list of goals every year, goals, some of which have finances attached to them. So we put those out this year, and luckily, because we have a staff member, he advocated for us on that front. And so we've got, if they approve the budget as presented, a couple of great projects coming up for this next year, including besides rebates. So we're giving rebates, large rebates, particularly for landscapers for the landscape equipment, working with Fairfax Lumber to do that. And that's based on San Anselmo's program, which had a lot of success. We've got an e-bike rebate program we're going to try to put forward, an electric appliance rebate program, a no idling campaign. And also we want to try to do a local EV bike show in Fairfax, since Ride and Drive Clean Bay Area had the collective money to do a number of fabulous events. We don't want those to stop. So we're going to see if we can do something local and in Fairfax. And we're also, the town has been really supportive of moving toward electrification of all of our buildings, so that, you know, the town can say, we want you as a community to do this because we're doing it. So we're getting an all electric kitchen in the pavilion. The firehouse is looking at changing out their gas stove. Our women's club, we've got a bunch of projects there. Oh, I got 15 seconds or 1 minute, looks like. So anyway, the town has been working hard. They're changing out all their landscaping equipment. They're even looking at an all electric street sweeper, which is like $600,000. So we're looking to see if there's any way to share that with San Anselmo. We also do have one thing I want to mention, as part of these building codes, we have a meeting on June 13th from 2 to 3, where we have somebody from the state coming to talk to us about Cal Green residential codes for next year, the basic tier 1 and tier 2. So if you're interested in that, email me or put your name in the chat and I'll be sure you know. It's an open meeting sponsored by the Fairfax Climate Action Committee. And then we have our parade coming up, the Fairfax Parade, June 11 and 12. I think San Anselmo and us will be in the parade with an electric car as the climate action committees, and then tabling for 2 days up on the ballpark. And I went 12 seconds over, but I think that's, I didn't give Danielle a minute to say anything, but there we go.
It's good. I'll just say hello.
Thank you, Jody. Thank you for being 7 minutes. Thank you for your work, and thank you, Danielle, for your work. So why don't we then go to Lori? Lori, I think you heard, we're attempting to compress a discussion of each organization's work into 7 minutes. So that'll be a real challenge. I'll give you a 2-minute warning, and what I should have said at the beginning is welcome. I know you made time to come here at 9:30, so thank you, and go ahead.
Okay, great. Nice to see you all. I'm going to talk about 2 different aspects of our work. One I know very well, and the other one, Annika should be here. She couldn't be here, but I'll do my best to. She's Ride and Drive, and I'm Cool the Earth. Cool the Earth is the backbone for Ride and Drive. We're sort of the organizing. I don't know, we do all the facilitation and do the website and all that, but Cool the Earth is our 501c3, and which birthed, you know, what was previously Drive Clean Marin, Drive Clean Bay Area, which is now we're calling Ride and Drive Clean, because we are including e-bikes. Cool the Earth, which is basically Carlene and the board, has really been focusing on the lack of reliability of EV charging, as I think I've talked to many of you about. We did a study with David Rempel, a retired professor from Berkeley, and tested all of the DC fast chargers in the 9 Bay Area county, and found that about 23% of them don't work. Either they're unreliable, not functioning, or they are damaged in some way. The cord is too smart, and I see that I am, okay, now I'm unfrozen. Wave at me if my internet goes out and you can't hear me. But anyway, so we are now deep into discussions with officials at both California, throughout California's government agencies, and also at the federal level to make sure that all this money that is about to come out, particularly from the Biden bipartisan infrastructure bill for EV charging, has conditions in the contract, in the funding contracts that are enforceable and require that the equipment actually function. So we're doing all that. We'll keep you posted. We're starting to get a little press on it, which is both of a double-edged sword. We don't want to do the work for the fossil fuel companies talking down about electric vehicles. The one thing that we could use help on is that we would like to do more of these studies where we had volunteers go out and test the chargers. These are volunteers who have their own EVs. We would ideally, we're going to do some retesting in the Bay Area. We also want to do some testing in LA. We'd like to do some testing in the Central Valley. I know we are a Marin group, but if you have connections to other groups like us that might have volunteers that we could use in those other geographic areas, and then we would come back to this group among others if we need volunteers to do some retesting in the Bay Area. So that's Cool the Earth. Now I'm going to switch over to Ride and Drive Clean. And as you know, we got money from TAM funded the county and all 11 jurisdictions in the county to do EV outreach, EV and e-bike outreach in March and April, excuse me, of this year. We did webinars, we did virtual EV and e-bike ride and drives. We did a number of actual in-person EV and e-bike shows. We did one in Novato, we did one in Mill Valley, we did one at the Civic Center. Let's see, there is a report that that is about to come out that is being prepared, is about to come out, delivered to the jurisdictions. And it talks about the various different kinds of events we had, the engagement that we have. I found it interesting that, let's see, San Rafael, 24%, in terms of our registration by city for all of our events, we had about 24% of them came from San Rafael, 20% came from Mill Valley, 16% came from Novato, and 10% came from San Anselmo. Those were the biggest chunks. So that's sort of how it broke down in terms of our engagement. And I'm not going to go into more detail because I'm just reading from slides. What I would like to ask people is that we would like to do this engagement with the counties, with the county and the jurisdictions again next year. And so we would hope that you would tell your jurisdictions, encourage your jurisdiction staff to talk to TAM and say that the event was a success and that we want more money for it, and that we'd like to repeat it next year. I'm sure that Annika is that the report that they're finishing on the results of the campaign are going to go back to the jurisdictions. I will make sure that people here who want to see that report get that report, so you can talk to your jurisdiction staff about it, say, that you appreciated it, and that we can continue to get TAM to fund this kind of effort at the jurisdiction level, because I think it dovetails with what Jody talked about, which is it's great for the jurisdictions to get money to do this work. And so they're, between that and the Climate Action Commission, and it's good to get the thing, the whole issue, not only there's some synergy, but there's actually some funding. And quite frankly, it would be great to get TAM thinking more about this issue. They've certainly been a climate delayer, if not denier. So I think to show that the jurisdictions want this money to do this kind of work is very important. So I think I'll leave it at that.
You're muted,
Thank
Bob.
you so much, Lori. That was great work and short. So thank you. Okay, so why don't we move to green change. Tom?
Okay. So let me set my clock. All right, so given the urgency that we take much more rapid climate action as a society and the need to scale up climate solutions much more rapidly, Green Change has been focused on scaling up engagement of people. And in particular, we need to scale up beyond the environmental choir. So much of the good work is being done by the same people that show up again and again. And so we've in particular sought to bring in people that are maybe of a different political or a different bandwidth of interest. For example, in February, we had a talk with Catherine Hayhoe, who is distinguished as an international climate scientist, but she is also a Christian evangelical, and she comes from a perspective of the Bible and stewardship, which is, part of the evangelical. She comes from the evangelical community, which we really want to form a connection to around this shared stewardship of the earth. As an example, and we had people showing up all around the country, even around the world, for that talk. And now at this point, we have at least a couple thousand people that are on our mailing list, that are receiving information from us regularly, that are accessing the information that we put together in terms of tips, in terms of connections to videos or more detailed references to other organizations like those that are here. And essentially, we're trying to seed synergy as much as we can between all the good work that's going on in all these different organizations. We have a social media presence. We are seeking to get the word out through as many of the means that are going to reach the broader public, and grab them with areas of interest like cooking in a non-wasteful way, using a chef or a person who's recognized for their cooking knowledge. And many of you are probably aware that we recently had the Earth Day event at the Mill Valley Community Center. And there was a big emphasis there on making it as appealing and family friendly and interesting to a wide range of people. And fortunately, a lot of good work by a lot of good volunteers, in addition to our regular team, resulted in an event which had over 1,500 participants, which had a lot of fun activities, particularly for kids. It was a family-friendly event. We had games, build your own art, and we had poetry readings. We had music, and as it turned out, it was a pretty fun event. But it really was clear that an awful lot of people learned a lot. We had 55 tables or 55 organizations represented there at the tables, and we also feel like this was a good synergizing kind of event for all of us to be together in a setting that was really kind of enjoyable, but also I think helps restore the sense that we really have a community, and let's grow this community. That's the that's one of the central parts of our goals and objectives. And I'll just say that the Mill Valley Community Recreation said that it was one of the most successful first-time events that they've had, and so without even asking us, they booked Earth Day weekend the following year. We spoke to them, a week after the event to explore that. And they said, well, we've already booked that. In fact, we booked Saturday and Sunday for next year, so that we could potentially have more groups with tables. We can potentially extend this out, in the material and program that's available. Now, all this, of course, depends upon the fact that we, again, are going to need a lot of volunteer help. But we did, in particular, get great support from actually a lot of young people, people that got involved through Mill Valley High School and some of the other schools, the TAM Makers program at TAM High School in particular. So as we move forward, again, what we're gonna need is to continue expanding the activities where we get as many people coming in that are new to this, and at the same time, we are kind of essentially, being a relatively new organization, we see ourselves as rapid prototyping, trying different things. And one of the most immediate priorities coming forward is, again, the electrification. So we're going to have an event coming up in June. We've invited David. We're also going to be participating with Electrify. Now,
1 minute, Tom.
what's that? That's going
You're
to be
doing great. 1 minute.
okay.
Or-
Thank you. All right. And that's going to be in June. And then in the fall, we see the election as the biggest priority. And that's where we're going to kind of shift gears towards providing as much information on, on important climate related races. And, we were very pleased to have, we are as some political representatives, as well as businesses, as well as, a lot of different kinds of organizations that have been participating in our events so far. And in general, our challenges are, I think, those of many of you all, which is we are a volunteer organization, and for the event next year in particular, we're going to seek, hopefully get some more support from entities like MCE in the county. They found it very successful, and going forward, actually at this point, we have a small deficit on that event. It was about a $12,000 event to have all those tables and everything else that was involved, the tents. But at this point,
Tom, I think we're
okay. All right. Well,
we're over.
okay. All right. Good.
But you did great. All right. Thank you. Let's see. Pam wanted to talk about the Green Home Tour. Pam?
Thanks. Thank you. So the Marin Green Home Tour is a offshoot of the East Bay Green Home Tour. We're not connected, but we're greatly impressed by, I don't know if any of you have seen it, but anybody can go on the East Bay Green Home Tour and look at the various homes. And so any of you can continue to partner with us or be on the committee. Tom Flynn is on the committee. So it's taking place Saturday and Sunday, October 22nd and 23rd. It's virtual, and it is a free 2-day virtual tour of 12 homes in Marin County. And it showcases what Marin residents are doing to combat climate change and improve air quality, generate clean energy, save water, and move toward a safer, healthier, greener, and more resilient future. It will feature new homes, major remodels, gradual retrofits, and low-cost, low-tech, do-it-yourself solutions for both homeowners and renters. The tour will also include short presentation by experts, links to relevant businesses and useful resources, rebates, and incentives, so attendees can benefit from the experience of our local sustainable living trendsetters. Because you all know that residences are at least 34% of our local greenhouse gas emissions. So the homes will be videoed this summer and then edited and then shown virtually, but with live, if folks are willing to, the homeowners will be live answering questions after their home is shown. I would like any input from any of you about here's some needs. A few, like Tom, has actively worked to get landlords to participate. And as far as I know, we haven't come up with a landlord who is available to participate in this. If you have resources on landlords, Bruce Bell, of course, is helping us with multifamily dwellings. So Nancy's home will be shown. And what one can do in a multifamily unit. We need to move to more diversity for our home people, whether they're renters or homeowners. It's appalling how we don't have that yet. And if any of you have access to a green home builder, we have a couple of realtors that will be participating with us that are doing fantastic work right now. So I hope to overlap with all of your efforts. One thing that I keep being confused about, and you've all talked about it, is what is the current status of the Cal Green electrification rules. And that doesn't necessarily have to do with being in people's homes for the tour, but I just think maybe this is an aside. Like David, my hope is that we can get San Rafael on board ASAP so that before Northgate housing is permitted, we can have all electrification. And they've said they're going to be all electric, but we want them to be EV ready. We don't want them to have just 3 EV sites. We want it to be, so that's just an aside. So if any of you are interested in helping, we've got a great team. Bob Brown, Gretchen Schubeck, Mark Chibert from the county, Sebastian Kahn from MCE, and Kathleen Gundry, who I met from this, and she's fantastic. Jody, you talked about partnering with her. Peter Waring. I think those are the key people who have been able to show up consistently and help. Kim Ragu was for a while and stepped back. So I'll see if I can get somebody else from Environmental Forum. Okay, that's it.
Thank you so much, Pam. So I'm going to say a little bit about Marine Conservation League, but first, are there other folks that other organizations that folks represent? Bill.
Well, I want to save some time for Marin Can.
Okay. So let me just give a brief overview of the work that Marine Conservation League is doing, and then we'll go to Marine Can. So when we talk about climate change, there are really 2 pieces to it. One is mitigation of climate change, and the other is adaptation to climate change. And we have 3 committees in Marine Conservation League that deal with the climate adaptation side. It's really important work, and it requires a good deal of expertise and willingness to advocate. And I'm not going to be able to go into the work that those committees are doing. A lot of it has to do with things like sea level rise and prevention of wildfires while maintaining native habitats. That's really an important part of the climate change related work that we do, which is the adaptation. But the work of mitigating climate change takes place in the Climate Action Working Group. And, in thinking about this entity, it's been mostly an educational forum. And over the last year, there's been much more of a movement to turn this into more of an advocacy effort. One person who looked at the organization called us a policy development and advocacy shop, Marine Conservation League. And on the mitigating climate change side, we really focused on policy development. So there's been a clean energy study group that has met that's focused on identifying what are the key issues, the most important issues that need to be advocated for in Marin. And one of our focuses has been on MCE clean energy. And once you get into the energy markets, you really have to understand a fair amount about those markets in order to be able to interact with the decision makers and their staffs that you want to influence, and that's MCE primarily at this point. So the group has been doing this a deep dive, looking at various issues. As I said, we meet bi-weekly, and if folks want to spend the time getting up to speed on clean energy issues, do contact me, because we can always use additional folks on that work. I mean, overall, what we want to do is more rapidly reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And that really has three components to it. We want clean energy as a starting point. So we monitor MCE's resource procurement plans pretty closely. At this point, it's urging MCE to have less hydro and more true renewable energy, which really does create additional renewable energy capacity. And we're on the lookout for ways to shave or shift electricity load through use of distributed energy resources, because ultimately what that does is reduce the use of fossil fuels on the grid. So that's the clean energy focus, and it really is MCE focused. A second goal is we want more rapid electrification. And so there's vehicle electrification and building electrification. For vehicle electrification, we think that there really needs to be a robust, countywide, aggressive plan to accelerate vehicle electrification. And the aim, I think, is to pull together to get a coalition of groups that can act as a type of collaborative that could then go out and get large grants to do truly innovative projects. And we met with Kirk Johnson a couple of weeks ago at the Climate Center to learn about their statewide efforts and what local efforts around vehicle electrification may make the most sense. And at this point, we are focusing a good deal on bidirectional charging, vehicle to home, vehicle to grid, as a way to speed EV adoption. And that's why we had Jackie Pirot from Nuvve present at last month's COG meeting. For building electrification, the second part of the electrification, our focus You saw the February meeting on building electrification ordinances. And we're going to draft a letter to various jurisdictions on the proposed building ordinance, both supporting what's there when we see it, and also pointing out what more we would like to see that's not there. And typically that's what we do, which is do a good deal of due diligence, take positions on issues, send letters to specific decision makers and their staffs. And we've been around for a long time, so those decision makers and staff tend to pay attention to what we have to say, and sometimes even agree with us. And so that's really the focus on building electrification. I think the third part of it is we want more grid resilience. And because it's not enough to just reduce greenhouse gas emissions, you want to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and be resilient. And so that's possible, because once you add more distributed energy resources, including through vehicle and building electrification, a lot more is possible when you talk about resilience in the face of public safety, power shutoffs, events, and a lot more is possible in terms of microgrids. So we think that there really is a good deal of possibilities there. The challenges that we face is, again, in dealing with MCE clean energy, you have to have the expertise. What we want are more people to help us in different areas. And so again, contact me. And then, of course, what we want to do is collaborate more closely with the folks in the organizations that are here, so as to make any advocacy efforts for reducing greenhouse gas emissions more rapidly, more effective. So that's a brief summary of our work. And I might even make 7 minutes, but I'm not sure. I forgot to ask Jim to be my timekeeper. So with that, we should go to Bill. Kate.
Thanks. Bob, I just wanted to put a plug in for the newsletter, because we're hoping that to use the newsletter as a way of advancing information about climate topics, and specifically information that has an immediate, is either part of a campaign or has an immediate impact on our readers. So we, in the March-April issue, for example, we did an article, Ken Strong wrote an article, Peter Schwartz contributed to the editing of that on the net energy metering that was being considered by the CPUC. And it was kind of an informational article, so people could really understand how that might impact those of us that have solar, or those of you that have solar. I don't have solar. And then in the most recent article we did, the most recent newsletter, we did an article on building electrification that was based on the February COG meeting presentation by David and by Brian from the county. And that was just to kind of give our readers a heads up about the REACH codes that are going to be advocated for in the next coming months, and lay the groundwork for, you know, what is building electrification, why it's important, and so I just wanted to say that part of the benefit of MCL's newsletter going to 800 or so people plus is that as our groups work together on something that we all come together and need to really promote, we have this as I'd like to have a climate article at least every other issue, or if not every issue, in promoting the most important, most time sensitive things that we're all kind of gathering around. Thanks, Bob.
Thanks, Kate. This is one of the benefits, or one of the perks of hosting this meeting, is that we get an extra 3 minutes, and 3 minutes of great information. So why don't we then move to Bill, who'll talk about Marin Climate Action Network's evolution.
Okay, thanks. That would be Marin Can, which the first headline I guess I want to make sure everybody gets is that it used to be called Drawdown Marin, is now renamed Marin Can. And they are, in fact, the board of directors has, the initial board has been selected and is having their organizational meeting next Wednesday. You can find the link for that on the county's website. And I'm on that board, and I'm looking forward to, you know, carrying the voices of all of you and your organizations into that countywide context. Also on the website, you'll see a strategic plan if you want to dive in more deeply. The big take home for me and motivator for me to stay involved in this are their goals, which are to achieve a 60% reduction of greenhouse gases by 2030 and zero net emissions by 2045. So these are in alignment, you know, with larger sort of UN type goals. And if that can be done here in Marin, you know, it'll be a great step forward, primarily as an example. And if it can't be done here, then, you know, it's unlikely to happen elsewhere. So check out the strategic plan. It has in its 3 or 4 formative years working with the county already teed up 6 or 7 endorsed solutions. And all of those in that time period have secured some fairly significant funding along the way as well through their own efforts and with some assistance from the county. And that would include Ride and Drive, Electrify Marin, the biomass study, Resilient Neighborhoods, and very importantly, the carbon farming effort out in West Marin. So challenges, I think right at the moment, organizationally, there's been some challenge in getting involvement from the public sector. And this really needs to be is premised on being a public-private partnership. And right now we've got a lot of, you know, folks from the private sector up there, but not so much on the public side. So I think that's a challenge that the board will be discussing. And also, you know, my favorite is we really need to bring together these very ambitious goals and make sure there's a coherent roadmap of how do we accomplish these goals within the limited time frame that we're working with. So working towards that, I think, is a big immediate sort of challenge. Always a challenge of funding, and there is some development assistance has been brought on, and also the challenge of promotion, you know, getting the word out. In terms of opportunity, you know, I think the main opportunity here from all of our viewpoints is to sort of raise a flag of these ambitious goals, you know, with which we can all march forward, and to really get out there in the public consciousness this vision and the ability to enact the vision. And I think having a banner like that can really be useful to all of us and all of our organizations in moving our own efforts forward. And I think along those lines, the main help needed really is to continue, from all of us, is to continue collaboration among ourselves and to get these things accomplished. And also importantly, as Tom, I think, was mentioning, to really keep expanding the tent in terms of those who are involved. So again, more from the business community, for instance, certainly more from the diversity community as well, but on and on. There's so many different sectors that are not fully engaged at this point in climate action. So that's I think the big help going forward. If I could tag on, Bob, just one pitch on or segment on one of these endorsed solutions, resilient neighborhoods, if that would be okay, and I'll try to keep it within a brief section. I'm conduiting here from Tamara, of course, who's upstairs working away at the stuff. So she wanted to say that, there are a couple of teams going on right now with resilient neighborhoods. They are focusing on reaching older adults and lower income and diverse households, but all other households as well. In June, there are a couple of more teed up to go forward. They're still being conducted online, which has been a benefit in many ways. Their banner under the Marin, the Marin Can flag is called CPR for the Planet. And in that, they're reaching out not only for building new teams, but they're also reaching back to their pool of graduates, which is, gosh, I think a couple of thousand at this point, and re-involving them. It's kind of like a graduate degree in resilient neighborhoods, right? That you can keep doing these actions, and with a particular emphasis on 2030. That this is a timeline we're working towards. Can these individual households be encouraged to get to completing to get to zero net emissions in their households by that time frame? So that's going forward. They've got a toolkit online that identifies all the rebates and incentives that can help households get there. And they're reaching out through their volunteer corps to those graduates to make that happen. They also provide in their work links to all of our organizations, Drive and Ride Clean, BayREN, the county MCE, and others, to try to expand the work and empower people to get it done. Right now, their biggest challenge is their outreach associate, who's so essential for bringing people to the teams. Has been out for a month for medical personal reasons, caring for her mother. And so that's been a real challenge right now. And if any of you have an interest in helping out in promotion and outreach capacity on, right now, please let Tamara know. She's absolutely looking for that kind of assistance right at the moment. So that's it for Resilient Neighborhoods. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sure Tamara will thank you for channeling. Belle?
Yes, I just wanted to say one thing as we come to the end of this, which is, Tom alluded to it, but we're really up against it because these elections are going to determine how far we can go with what we're doing. And so I'm not sure how we get involved and how we as a community that does well on climate change can affect other communities that are not doing so well. That's a challenge. But I just wanted to mention that Congressman Huffman's office has said to us, well, we're ready for another climate event like we had some 4 years ago. And so as a climate for lead on climate, or all of us here, we should give some thought to whether we want to do something before the election on this, on bringing people together and really making a statement and reaching out. I'm not sure whether that's on people's radar, but I'm throwing it out. So thanks.
Okay. So thank you, Bill.
Could I just
Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I'd just like to add to that thought, Bill, that, you know, Jared has regularly been, I think, a recognized climate leader. I think that, you know, there's been some discussion about the possibility of joining forces with Senator McGuire. They have overlapping districts. And then we have an election coming up for assembly where, you know, we have candidates who, you know, essentially, I think we want to enlist them to also, you know, essentially take a position that this, you know, these overlapping districts should be setting an example nationally. And, you know, maybe that's something that relates to both the election and an upcoming climate event.
Thanks.
Yeah.
You
So,
might, Tom, if you're not aware, you know, all of those assembly candidates were the subject of a forum.
I attend that.
That's right. So that's online now through the League of Women Voters and was sponsored by OFA, SSR, and MCL. So.
Yeah. You know, I just think that you know, essentially the taxpayer supported elected representatives, you know, they have primarily a responsibility that's related to legislating, but they are essentially the people that are our representatives, that we, you know, essentially, as much as we can have them reach the rest of the republic, as much as we can have them essentially prioritize climate in their positions, not just, or, you know, well beyond just a respective forum, but, you know, essentially making that a part of their job, and really distinguishing this, just, you know, these overlapping districts as, you know, they're our leaders and they're going to help engage our entire community in this effort.
right. So, okay, so let's draw this to a close. One more thing that I would add is that there's a lot of bad news and good news. The bad news is that every climate report that comes out indicates that the situation is more dire. The bad news also is that there's an unfavorable political climate. So we have to be prepared for what happens in November. But then, as Congressman Huffman said at a recent event, who knows?
Right.
We could all be surprised. But the flip side is that I think that there are more opportunities now than ever before. You know, one of the reasons why we focused on MCE Clean Energy is because they are a deep pocket, one of whose mission is to reduce greenhouse gases. This coming year, they're going to have a budget surplus of $115 million, which is not spare change. And that's one potential source of money. Get a sliver of that added to the money that's coming from the state and will be added with Newsom's budget, and the money from the bipartisan infrastructure bill. So there's probably more money coming. There is more money going to be available for new initiatives than ever before. And to the extent we capitalize that is great. I would say it's, given that we're a wealthy county, the responsibility is that we adopt model programs, model behavior, and be a model for elsewhere and spread whatever we learn to other areas that are less fortunate. I think this is a great environment to work in. It's liberal, and it's got terrific advocates like the folks who are here. So I think if we work together, there are some real possibilities. So with that, does anybody have additional comments? Anything else? Eric, is there anything you want to say? No? Great. Okay, folks, thank you. And David,
Okay, I just wanted to add one thing here at the end. I realized that today's program of having a more detailed reports on each of the groups was kind of a fill-in, but I think this has been extremely valuable. And I want to express that and thank everyone for sharing what each group is doing, because clearly there's a lot of opportunity for overlap and working together on things. So I think this was great.
yeah. And yes, this was a fill-in, but you know, the more that we talked about it, the more we realized that this could be also valuable, and I think it was. So thank you, everybody.
Thank
It's been
you.
terrific. Right. Bye-bye.